Drink of the day, sparkling rosé. Episode 4. Cheers. Cheers to y'all if you're watching from home on your couch with your wine. What's today's topic?
So I feel like we should go back to the conversation of just being a suburban Black girl.
So we got a lot of feedback this past week on a clip from our first episode about being accused of being whitewashed or talking like a white person. So we kind of wanted to piggyback on that conversation and just some of those like microaggressions or comments or judgments or things of that nature that we've all dealt with as Black women.
Yeah.
My question for you would be, what's the wildest or most inappropriate thing someone said to you, like in the workplace?
A little backstory. I am a homeowner and I have been for a few years right now. And so I remember one of my previous bosses, I was already a homeowner at the time. And, randomly she's asking where I live. And she's like, oh, like, what side of town is your apartment on? And for me, it just made me feel like, It's like, why would you automatically assume that I am just a renter
Mm-hmm.
based off of, I don't know, maybe my age, my race, or what it was. But for her to automatically assume that, it just kind of made me feel a little like, what? I just feel like you don't assume those things when you talk to people. And then,
Yeah.
of course, once I explained to her, like, I actually do, own my own home and it's a townhome, she's just kind of like, oh.
It's always the, oh.
Yeah, because it's like, y'all not the only ones that
Yeah.
can be the only one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think for me, that kind of had me like, oh, wow. That's one of those ones recently that I was just a little definitely triggered by and kind of just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, bitch.
One I know for sure, off the top of my head, I found out after I didn't work at this company anymore, but I found out that somebody had referred to me as Serena Williams. Like, I walked into a meeting and they said, what is Serena Williams doing here? Calling me Serena Williams. Not that that's an insult to be called
No.
Serena Williams, but like, or not that there's anything wrong with Serena Williams.
No, love her so much.
But very ignorant.
Yeah. Do you think they actually meant that like dead ass?
Based off the culture of this company, yes.
Wow.
Yes. 1000%. One of the other things, like in the workplace or just navigating white spaces in general, is just the code switching, of course. But like for me, I just feel like there's been so many times where I've had to laugh and smile and nod just because I actually could not relate. Like I feel like we have such different hobbies sometimes. No, I don't listen to that country music artist. Like what? And it's just like, I can't really contribute to this conversation because no, I can't relate. Or just even growing up, right? Especially when I moved to Massachusetts, there would just be school activities that were like, this is not something Black people would participate in. Like there was this thing called a mud run where the fire department would come to the field of our school, hose it down so the field would be muddy, and the kids would just want to, and then everybody would just run. They would put on like old, like dingy clothes and just run in the mud. And even at like 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, I was like, what is appealing about this to y'all?
Right.
No, I'm not. And I literally was the only person, I swear, that did not go. I'm like, why on earth would I want to go run in the mud and get dirty and disgusting and have dirt in my hair and then bring that dirt home? Like, I'm like, why is this fun? Even at 12 years old, I was like, why is this fun?
It's like, is that where mud runs originated?
I have no idea. Honestly,
crazy.
Again, it's just like, can't relate. But then you feel left out, or again, another way you feel like you don't belong at a young age because it's like, I'm not engaging in this.
Yeah, no,
type
for
of stuff.
sure, for sure. And I think 9 times out of 10, if it's not like a Beyonce or Michael Jackson or something like that, they don't know the artist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why a lot of times when it's like, oh, what did you do over the weekend? I find myself pulling back sometimes because it's like when I tell them, oh, I went to this concert or I went to this restaurant, they're like, what? Where's that? And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't have time for that.
They
You
have
know what
no
I mean?
idea.
Because it starts to make me feel like I have to overly explain myself. And then you start to see the change in like their tone and like their body reaction. And it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
They make it so obvious when like they don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
When 9 times out of 10, I feel like a lot of times we really don't know what they're talking about, but we act like we do.
Yes, yes. That's the difference. Is like, I'm just like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then they are like, what the fuck are you talking
Yeah.
about? So, yeah. And I think that's why just going to work on top of actually having to work can be so exhausting, because the amount of energy that you have to put into code switching can be a lot.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for me, I know I've had the experience of working for a Black owned business compared to you. Not too much now. And so like there are huge differences, I think, when you work with a Black owned business from, a typical
Yeah.
corporation. And so I think there are things that I've learned from both environments. Um, and I think that both have, different pros and cons to them. But of course, I think obviously when I was working for the Black owned business, I didn't have to code switch as much.
Right.
If anything, I felt like I had to kind of like get a little more,
Help the culture be a little bit more professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. A little more structured, things like that. But then, I learned some things out of that as well. So I love all my experiences.
Sidebar with Black-owned businesses, like they make it so hard to support them sometimes. The lack of customer service, and they don't answer the phone. I don't know why they bother having a phone number, but they don't answer it. Would be my only qualms. But that was just a mini rant I had to say.
And no, you're so right about that. But I think for me, being on the back end of things, people don't realize some of the volume that some of these Black-owned businesses have, especially when they're really popular and busy. Like, it's like the phones literally ring off the hook. Like, it's like 6 people on the line at the same time you're calling. And 9 times out of 10, I don't think people realize how, no offense, a lot of people ask and call about the dumbest things that are on the website, that are on the Instagram. Like, I always have to tell people, like, read above, see above. It's here, it's there. It's like a lot of stuff that people call about. It's like, this, if you actually read, I promise you, you would figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those things, but I do get your point. The customer service could be a lot better, but it's just a lot of moving pieces in the background for sure.
Yeah. I think the other thing about the workplace too, is I feel like it's both sides, right? It's they get uncomfortable because they have no idea what you're talking about. But also, I think I've experienced them trying to code switch on me. So when I've come to work with like a completely different hairstyle, and it's like, hey girl, I love your hair. And it's like, that's not how you talk. Like, what is going on here? Like, don't do that.
Yes. Yes. I don't like when they girl me.
Yes.
I'm not your girl.
Yes. Yes. It's like, you don't got to do all that. Just tell me you like my hair and keep it moving. But don't add your little fake black scent, please.
No, seriously.
Have you ever gone to work with like a different hairstyle and gotten a certain comment?
Yeah, like, because honestly, as a Black woman that wears a weave, I am in between styles at times. And so with that being said, I do feel like people treat me differently, or they're kind of like, oh my God, I didn't know that was you, Ashlyn. I barely recognized you. When'd you change your hair? Oh my God, I love it. So it's like, I do, yes. And that's the thing, like, I literally hate, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know I have to do a different style and everyone's going to have freak out. Or obviously when you get the braids, like, it's like every time we change our hairstyle, it's like oh, I love it. I love it. Like, die for, And so it's just having to, I feel like as a Black woman, sometimes in the workplace, you have to mentally prepare yourself walking in with that new hairstyle with your head held high, as if like, you know what? I'm just going to receive the compliments and go about my business and not take it too hard or literal. Of course, if they touch your hair, that's obviously different.
No, the touching of the hair is crazy.
But thank God I haven't had that happen to me.
Yeah.
But I know those situations can be very triggering. Of course, I think growing up, I would get those situations where I would have like a natural bun or my natural big poof, but I honestly don't do that anymore for
Mhm.
situations like and reasons like that. Like,
Mhm.
please do not touch my hair.
Yeah.
But I hate to say it, I do sometimes find myself not really going in it with a natural big bun or a natural big ponytail for
Mm-mm.
situations like that. Like, I rather just not have the extra attention on me. Like, I just want to do my work and go home.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, praise be that I have a work from home job, because those
Right.
in between days, I'm straight up camera off.
So, how do you feel about when you start a new job and the type of hair that you go into? Are you the type that you'll avoid certain hairstyles when you're starting a
Mm.
new job just based on like I don't want them to perceive me one way?
Honestly, I'm thinking this job that I just got 2 months ago, I definitely was interviewing with like a half up, half down with baby hairs. So, I
Mm.
mean, that's obviously not box braids or anything or dreads or anything like
Right.
that, but like, baby hairs can be perceived as ghetto. So,
I mean, yeah, you're in a half up, half down style.
yeah, it is what it is. Like, I am who I feel like lately I've started to find a little bit more of a balance of just being myself
Yeah.
in the workplace, and it kind of is what it is. Like, when I first started this job, and the corny icebreaker questions, and it's like, what are your hobbies? And like, me and this other girl on my team started on the same exact
Mhm.
day. And so one of the icebreaker questions is like, oh, what are your hobbies? And so the other girl goes first, and she's like, oh, I love to sing. She's like, I don't know what, she didn't knit, but some sort of like creative
Mhm.
arts and craftsy thing. And I was just like, I'm not even going to make anything up. I was like, wow, I would love to say I had an actual talent, but I was like, I honestly enjoy eating and having a good cocktail. And like, that's the truth. And I wasn't going to sit there and make up some hobbies that I don't have or
Yeah.
whatever. I just said it. And you know what the responses were? Oh, you're on the right team. We love a good cocktail, So I'm just like, and not all workplaces are like that. I think I'm
Right.
lucky to be on the team that
Yeah,
I'm on
absolutely.
and at the company that I'm at.
Yeah.
Um, because the entire team is millennials pretty
Oh, I
much.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's important.
So I think it was easier for me to just be able to be myself and give an honest response.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it can be awkward with those questions where it's like, what do you like to do? And it's like, especially a few years ago when I was more outside,
Mhm. Oh
like,
gosh. It's like, what did you do over the
oh,
weekend?
nothing,
Literally.
just hung out.
I'm like, I just laid low, hung out with the fam.
Yeah.
And it's like, child, I was outside all weekend. I just rolled in. I really just went to bed like 3 a.m. this morning.
Right. Sunday fun day in Houston.
Literally, no, but that's how it is. Like, it's like I literally cannot tell you what I did over the weekend.
Yeah.
That's
I actually cannot tell you at all. So
absolutely not.
just hung out with fam.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think kind of a microaggression or a comment, a very ignorant comment that we've all heard is X, Y, and Z for a Black girl is, I think, a universal experience for a lot
Mhm.
of Black women. You're so pretty for a Black girl, or you're so articulate for a Black girl. And it is very ignorant and very telling about that person's mindset
Right.
towards Black people. Have you ever gotten comments like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes you kind of feel like, oh, so I'm like maybe the first of my kind for you to think differently of.
Yeah,
And I think that is so weird. And it definitely is very like, whoa, like, did you
yeah,
just say that right now?
yeah,
But of course I find it very offensive. But I think that's also why I try my hardest to carry myself the best way I can, for reasons like that. Because it's like I hate when people throw these random narratives or assumptions on me just based off of how I look, so it makes me make sure that I am carrying myself to the best way I can. But I guess what about for you?
I think when I was younger, I was definitely a lot more timid and would not feel comfortable correcting people or honestly
Hmm.
checking them in that moment. But as I've gotten older, it's just like life makes you more fed up with dealing with
Right.
things or if you just grow up and come out of your shell. But I definitely feel more comfortable correcting people now or speaking up
Mm-hmm.
if certain things like that are said. And I also think it's about discerning too sometimes where it's a teachable moment or where it's like a you got me effed
Yes.
up.
Yes.
Because I've definitely corrected white friends where they just did not grow up around a lot of Black people. They genuinely did not mean any harm.
Right.
But then explaining to them why saying certain things are not okay. And so I think it's knowing who is teachable and who is just straight up ignorant
No,
and
for sure.
potentially racist, honestly. So yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think I loved how my friends, my non-black friends growing up would kind of just genuinely ask me real questions. Like
Mm,
because some of them really don't know. Like
yeah.
some of them really are just so naive to it. And once I explained certain things or I used to correct them on certain things, then they understood and wouldn't do it again. But sometimes they just don't know. So I do agree there are moments where they are teachable and there are moments where it's like, you know what, I just gotta really get ugly with you.
Yeah.
Or there's some moments now in my older adult life I've learned to like, you know what? Just cut a look and keep it pushing. It's not even worth the energy. I had to do that recently to a woman in Nordstrom's rack
Why?
because we were in line. Well, you know how it is like when you're going through Nordstrom's rack. They've got all the goodies in the front while you're in line.
Hmm.
So I'm like looking at stuff, but clearly I'm in line. And this white woman just storms past as if like me and my mother are not in line. And I kind of stopped her in her tracks and gave her a look like, I know you lying. And she was like, oh, oh, sorry. Are you guys in line? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, okay. And so, of course, then she was like, continued to stay behind us. But it's like the audacity of like, she just felt like she could just kind of storm past us without asking. Like, you clearly see this is a line. So why
Hmm.
wouldn't you ask? Why would you just assume like, oh, I can just walk past them?
Hmm.
It's like, no. But with my mother being there, of course, I think it made me be a lot more respectful and not go off on her. I just literally cut her a death look because I was like, girl, be so for real right now.
I
You know?
think too, sometimes we're dead ass just invisible to them,
I think so.
truthfully,
I truly
sometimes.
think so. Which is like,
Um,
how? Well, how?
but I also think it's also a inherent sense of entitlement
Yes.
that sometimes maybe they're aware of or sometimes they're not aware of. Um, but for me, where I've had to keep my composure
Mm-hmm.
or where I've really especially dealt with this is at the airport because I travel
Mm.
so much that I've racked up points and status and I get upgraded. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten upgraded to first class and all of the white men are lined up and I'm up there and I'm sometimes the only woman, but the only woman, definitely the only person of color.
Yeah.
Or I'm lined up and they will straight up walk in front of me because they're like, well, there's no way she's boarding before I am,
Wow.
type
Yeah.
situation. And I really want to be like, did you not just see me standing here?
Yeah.
Um, or even just after boarding and sitting in first class and people looking at me like, how did you get here? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's definitely something I've experienced. And now I just sit there like, I belong there because I
Mm-hmm.
do,
You do.
but I think sometimes when you first get into those spaces, it feels like imposter syndrome or
Yeah.
whatever. And like, I've definitely sat next to people and then they might be like, try and make conversation like, oh, what do you do? Or, oh, are you
Mm-hmm.
platinum? Are you medallion? you know,
Ew.
whatever, like being nosy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love Delta because the flight attendants are all very nice. Like they don't ever treat anybody
That's good.
differently. And honestly, a lot of them, like I had this gay flight attendant a couple months ago and he was like, how are you doing? You doing okay? He's like, is he bothering you? Talking about the guy sitting next to me. I was like, no, I'm good. He was like, because I forget what I had. I think I was coming back from St. Thomas. And so I was like in a rum and coke mood still coming off of vacation. So he made me a rum and coke and he was like, you want another one? I was like, no, you made the first one very strong. So he came back whatever, like an hour later, he was like, "You sure you don't want another one?" I was like, "I'm good." He was like, "Okay." He was like, "That man's not bothering you, is he?" I was like, "No."
The way you said, "That man, because I already know that's exactly how you said it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's great. It was great. But yeah, it's definitely funny. Like I wish I could like maybe I will do it one day because I've definitely seen people do this, make TikToks when they're in first class and like subtly record the stares that they get.
Oh, I've seen
I want to do that
yeah.
one day of just like people looking at you like, what are you doing here?
No, literally. No, I think you really should. Because honestly, you really fly like first class so often to where I feel like you should. Because especially you being younger and a Black woman, I know they'd be like,
Yeah.
If anything, they're probably like, I wonder who she's married to. Or oh, she's
Yeah.
probably like married to an athlete or dating an
Yeah.
athlete. Or she's probably like so and so's daughter. But it's like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. I'm here on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I just
Mm-mm-mm.
love, Black people, we have the universal language of the look. So I love when there's a fellow Black person in first class and we're all like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Or you ever get the nod from the uncles like,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, queen.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
No, my favorite is connecting through Atlanta because all the flight attendants are Black. And they'll be like, "You ain't bringing nothing to eat." Or like they'll make sure they're good, like because like in first class or comfort, they'll give you like the snack basket to choose from. But like I love a good Biscoff cookie. So sometimes I'll ask the flight attendants, I'll be like, "Can I have a Biscoff?" And they always come back and give me like a handful, especially if they're a black flight attendant. Like I'll take one, and then this last time I flew, I took one. And then like 30 minutes later, this lady came back and gave me an entire handful to put in my bag. It's like, it's always nice when we look out for each other.
Exactly.
So
I want us to do more of that too, looking out for each other more.
Yes.
Because I feel like other races definitely look out for their people.
Yeah. And I think too, that just reminded me of our video about the being whitewashed and being called Oreo going like semi-viral or whatever. And there was dozens of Black women in the comments like saying that, "Oh my God, I'm so triggered," or "Oh my God, I heard I was an Oreo too." But then there was a handful of people commenting, "It's not about being educated or enunciating your words. It's the tone. It's the Valley Girl tone." And I'm like, I get it. And that, if you want to say that that's talking like a white person having the Valley Girl accent or tone, whatever it is, I get that perspective. However, I don't know if you saw, there were so many women in our comments that were saying they straight up grew up in the hood. One girl said she grew up in the Bronx, but she chose to enunciate her words and speak properly. And those people were still getting called Oreo.
Yeah.
So it's not about the Valley Girl tone all the time. It's the problem is that enunciating your words and speaking proper English to many people equates to being white.
No, exactly.
And I think the point went over some people's heads with that.
Clearly.
Number one. But number two, to me, the most important message out of that video is stop. It's not necessary to say, number one, it's not necessary to tell someone they're whitewashed. It's not necessary to tell someone that they talk white. But the biggest lesson out of that to me that I hope everybody can take away is stop telling young girls that they are whitewashed or that they talk like they're white, because those are pivotal years where you are making somebody feel like they don't belong.
Right.
And then especially if you go to a private school or you grow up in a white suburban neighborhood, you already deal with those cultural differences like we've been talking about this entire time, where you don't feel like you belong, i.e. not participating in a mud run.
That's out.
And then you get around your own people and they're telling you that you're whitewashed and making you feel like you're not Black enough. And then you're this young adolescent that doesn't feel any sort of belonging anywhere.
Right.
And I think that is the overall message that we were trying to get out. Not just complaining about being told that we talk white, because we might say like every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree to your point. And it's just like, those are things that even us right now sitting here on this couch, like there's so much healing that's being done with us being able to have these conversations on a weekly basis, because it's like we're still suffering from some of those situations and things we went through in our upbringing just based off of those nuances. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's so important to just be a little more compassionate and careful of your choice of words, of how you know, label someone. It's just, it's not fair. And I just, ugh.
The point is, it's not necessary.
No, it's so
Like,
unnecessary.
if your niece, because there were so many girls in the comments, like, I get this from family, I get this from my dad. And it's just like, if that's how your daughter talks, why do you feel it necessary to make that comment?
Right.
It's not funny, it's hurtful. And I
Yeah.
think one thing in the Black community that we do is laugh through our pain or dark humor or whatever, but it does affect people and their
For sure.
self-esteem and their sense of belonging and their sense of Blackness at a young age. So to me, the biggest takeaway would be stop saying that
Please
to
and
young
thank
girls.
you.
The end. Have you ever felt isolated or misunderstood by your Black peers because you were seen as different?
Yeah. So actually, like I said before, I grew up in California. And so I moved to Houston when I was basically 21. And I was able to do this interdistrict transfer, and I came to a HBCU here in Houston. And so I was able to have the PWI experience, and then I came here and had my HBCU experience for a year. And I'll never forget that first moment when me and my mom went to tour my dorm, and we're in, the common area of the dorm, and it's the workers there and some of the students. And I come in there and I'm like, "Hi, my name's Ashlyn. I'm here for a tour." And I just remember everyone turning around like, it was like 8 people that turned around, and I was like, oh my God, like, what did I do?
That sounds like a scene out of a movie.
It was literally seen out of a movie.
Where like the record scratches.
Yes. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I don't think I belong here. Because I was like, geez, and that is in the moment where I realized they see you as different. And you could tell that I turned by the way I talked, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when I was there, honestly, most of my time, I was only there a year, but it took me a minute to really get people to, I feel like, understand who I was and understand where I'm coming from. But they, of course, a lot of people, I think, judged me based off of my tone. And I think coming straight from there to Houston, it was a huge culture shock for me. Like I tell people that all the time, the biggest culture shock for me. But I think over my years of being here in Houston, my tone has changed. My voice has definitely changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more deeper. Before it was more like, hi, So like I said before, I do think sometimes your tone can somewhat change depending on your environment and what you're around. But also, I think it's also part of getting older and your voice
your voice gets
mature,
deeper.
right?
Yeah.
But it was definitely devastating, and it was hard to really navigate and overcome for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I had a similar experience, not as bad, but again, for me, going from high school in Massachusetts to going to college in the Bronx.
Yeah, it's huge.
Honestly, I feel like my freshman year, a lot of my Black teammates on my team, I feel like they didn't really care for me that much, honestly. And I felt like I got along better with either my teammates that were Black that maybe grew up in suburbia or my white teammates. I don't really think they cared for me that much because I was different than them, which was unfortunate. So that in and of itself, I think the transition from high school to college can be hard, especially when you're an athlete. So I think that made my freshman year a little harder. But yeah, it definitely sucks when even if they don't say it, it's like, yeah, you're not Black enough for us.
No, and we've all been there.
Yeah. But it got better, so it was fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
They all graduated, so
that was me in high school. I felt like my freshman year of high school, that's when I kind of was transitioning from private school back to public. And I just remember like going to my high school, and sadly I felt like, the white kids were gravitating towards me more than my Black peers. And that was hard at first to deal with, because at first, like, I remember my first couple weeks coming home from school, I was like, okay, like, the people were cool, but I'm like, they weren't my people. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I didn't feel like these were my friends. And so,
Yeah.
but it took me a minute to kind of like navigate and get my way into like the black girl squad. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like I had to meet one to kind of buy me in. And then I'll never forget when my friend brought me, like I already kind of knew who the circle was. And then as soon as my one friend that I was cool with at the time brought me to the lunch table, it kind of was very awkward. But then of course, eventually I was kind of like, brought into the crew, but
Mhm.
it definitely took some time.
Mhm.
But yeah, like that transition is very hard
Yes.
because it's like, you're one of us, but you're kind of different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes time. Sometimes you just got to force your way in there.
Force.
No, for real. Like, force is like, this is crazy. Like,
So with that, then when did you get to the point where you just started embracing, like, this is who I am? I am Black, but this is how I talk. These are the things I like to do. Um, at what point did you feel like less uncomfortable or less insecure about that and just like, this is who I am? It is what it is.
honestly, I feel like it's something that I'm still working on, but I
Mhm.
have come to, you know, the conclusion like this is who I am. But still feel like over the last few years, it's something I'm still dealing with and still working through, depending on like who I'm around. I feel like
Mhm.
there's still people to this day that, oh, you're a valley girl, or like you talk like a valley girl. And it's just like,
Mhm.
so I think it's something that I still work through, but it's like I still am very secure in myself. And I'm like, I am who I am. I come from where I come from. And it's like at the end of the day, like I know my roots. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So regardless of what you think I am, I know who I am. I think that's so important. But of
Mhm.
course, I think that comes with a lot of just confidence building and knowing who I am and just, standing on that.
Mhm.
But I think it's one of those things that I still honestly am currently dealing with. And I
Mhm.
think it's something that I'll always deal with because it's like I can't change where I grew up
Mhm.
or where I come from,
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly feel like for me, starting to make content kind of helped me because
Hmm.
when I think now about the fact that I make videos and I'm talking to the camera and I'm uploading them online, I, like that is me way out of my shell. I definitely had to like get to this point, but I think now the small little community that I've built online and being able to connect with people or people relate to me, um, I think has helped because it's
Mm.
almost created a sense of belonging. Like
Yeah.
people actually, and even us starting this, like the initial reaction that we've had to me has just been so amazing
Yeah,
and
it
surprising
has.
of the amount of people. Because I feel like this could be hit or miss, honestly.
Facts.
Like, but the
Facts.
amount of people that relate to some of the things we're saying to me is very surprising, but just refreshing. And I
Yes.
think that makes it easier to be comfortable with the things that we've experienced and who we are because we're not alone
Right.
with these experiences. So I actually think creating content has helped me in that way. Like, no, I am who I am. And
Yes.
there's plenty of people that relate to that. Just because I've had experience with people who don't does
Right.
not mean that there's anything wrong with who I am because, your people are out there. And I also just feel like I think I've gotten to the point of just being tired
Mm-hmm.
of you can get just tired of other people's opinions to the point where you actually do not care anymore.
Facts, for sure.
Um, I think obviously making content has helped me with that because it's just like, okay, if you want to have a negative opinion, that's fine. But there's 500 other people that liked this
Yeah.
and they resonate with it. So you can go somewhere else. I don't care. So I think that's helped. Another thing that's helped me feel comfortable just in my own skin and accepting this is who I am, this is how I grew
Mm-hmm.
up, is therapy. Because,
Mm.
like we talked about last week, therapy is holding yourself accountable, but it's also holding a mirror up to your face. And
Mm-hmm.
I always say there's really not much that anybody can say to me that can really hurt my feelings, because the things that I've had to hear about myself in therapy, anything you or anybody can say on the internet, it is nowhere near the things that I've had to face in therapy. So I think for me, that's given me, even though it's hard to hear, but once you get over that hump, it's like, okay, I know about myself. I know the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think all of that comes together to make you more accepting and confident in who you are.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's also why I've slowly gotten to the point where I could give an F about other people's opinions, because the worst of the worst that I've had to hear about myself, I've heard it already in therapy. You know, so the things that are so deeply rooted, you know, people can hit you where it hurts.
Oh, for
right?
sure. For sure.
But I've already dealt with what hurts.
Right.
You know? So I think that's why it's like, oh, you're this, you're this, you're this. If you don't like it, that's fine. But like, I feel good about who I am because I've dealt with the things that I don't like about myself.
Yeah.
Already, you know? So I think that's how I've been able to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think also just thinking of the fact of, you know, let's just talk about how much, you know, parents have to sacrifice sometimes when it comes to, you know, being in the positions that we are now, as far as just like a lot of us that were raised in the suburbs, our parents made sacrifices to get us there because that's really not how they grew up. So when I think of my
Yeah, at all.
parents, right, it's just like, you know, they came from nothing, but it's like with me, it was like, no, we're getting out of the hood
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to the burbs and we're going to completely start over.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like I walk with my head high because of the sacrifices my parents made
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get us to where we are now. So it's
Mhm.
like, for me, it's like there's no other choice. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to continue on the legacy that they started and decided to be like, I'm going to be the change. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so I feel like a lot of us in this generation of millennials, we're living in the change of what our parents decided, like,
Mhm.
it stops with me. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Or some of us, it's like it stops with us. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's just also being unapologetic about that, and the fact
Right.
that like none of us asked to be brought into this world. So if I was
Most of us,
born
yeah.
into a certain situation and you're mad about like, what am I supposed to do? This is where I grew up. This is how I grew up. This is how I
Yeah.
talk. And quite literally, I had no control over it. So
Right.
what am I supposed to do about that? And having somebody call you a certain name to make you feel bad about it is just like, again, I guess it's for me just about getting thicker skin. Like, it is what it
Mhm.
is. I am who I am. Like it or don't like it. Be mad or don't be mad. Take it up with
Right.
God.
Give it to God and
Right.
move on. So my question for you is, do you feel like Black women are often judged more harshly for how they present themselves compared to others?
Ooh, yes. I think it's something had to become aware of at a younger age. The first thing that comes to mind for me is going through puberty and realizing all of a sudden I had somewhat of a curves, or like I went through puberty and I had like butt and thighs all of a sudden, right? And I I had to learn that I could not wear certain things anymore, or I couldn't wear the things that my peers were wearing because it did not look the same on me and it would be
Mm.
perceived differently. I think that was my first encounter with that was, I think it might have been middle school where like wearing sweater dresses with leggings was a thing.
Yep.
And mine needed to be extra long. They could not be shorter because I was a little curvier. I mean, and being curvy is not exclusive to being a Black woman, but
Right.
our bodies can be a little bit different. So even to this day, I feel like I don't feel comfortable wearing certain things that other people like. Literally, I don't really like wearing pants at work without a longer blazer that covers my butt or something, because I don't know. I feel like I have a perky butt. I feel like it just the outfits that someone else, even a white woman that
Yeah.
has a perky butt, it's perceived, honestly, like, let's call a spade, like more sexually or more inappropriate when it's us.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
I do feel like we're more sexualized in the workplace for sure.
Yes. Period. Even younger
Yeah, that's true.
girls.
Yeah.
Even younger girls. Like, as a young age, little Black girls are not perceived as little girls.
Very true.
So yeah, I think that was my first experience with it as a young age, but also even now I'm still aware of it as an adult, not wearing certain things.
Yeah. I think most when I think about it, I think of the sexuality of it all, like just feeling like we're more sexualized. I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing for me.
You know how white people can slack off, they can bullshit, or they can
Oh
straight up,
yeah.
they can look sloppy at work with a messy bun, but if we came in with a messy afro, it would be a problem. Like,
Yeah, it's like, do we need to? Are you okay?
you know what's so refreshing? And I don't know if you've ended up on this side of TikTok where it's like, for once, Black women and white women coming together, and it's Black women talking about they love when the white girlies do the claw clip.
Mm-hmm.
Or they love when their hair is just like sleek and straight. Because you know how white girls love to do like a tousled and they like tease their hair.
Yes.
So, like, I feel like in this side of TikTok, it's all the Black girls hyping them up for their like sleek straight hair or the claw clip. And then all the white girls are talking about how they actually love when our box braids get old and start to grow out. But I'm like, this is a good trend because we're all just like,
Oh,
you know, for
yes.
once coming together. But I think that's just so cute and positive because it's like, no,
Yeah.
when the box braids start to grow, it's time for them to come out. But it's hilarious
Listen.
that like the white girlies love it and we love their claw clips and stuff. So
Yes.
I always think when the two sides of TikTok collide, it's very
Right.
nice. At what point when you're dating a guy do you feel comfortable wearing your bonnet or wrapping your hair?
I knew you were gonna
or
say
wearing
this.
your scarf.
I knew you were gonna ask me that. Not gonna lie, I
Never.
take a while. Like I take a
Same.
while. Like I hate to say, I'm the type he's got to be like, "Where's your bonnet, babe?" I'm like, "Oh, this thing." I'm glad we're in a safe space. You know, and I put her on. But it takes me a while, honestly, to just really like put my bonnet on and really feel comfortable in that space.
I feel like I'm quicker to get comfortable with just a scarf. Like if
Oh,
I just put a scarf, because you know a scarf is low key just like a headband.
No, yeah,
Like
love
I
my
feel like I
scarf.
transition from the scarf to
Mhm.
eventually the bonnet
Yeah.
when I get more comfortable. But yeah, the full on like doobie wrap with the scarf where you that'll take a hot minute, but it takes a little while.
No, I agree. I agree. What about, I guess, when you're thinking of like letting him see you in that in between style or just with your cornrows? Like, how long would that
Oh
take?
God, the wig braids? Oh no.
Yes, the wig braids.
Oh my God. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna lie, I don't know. To be honest, it's been a while where I've dated someone when I was wearing a wig. I low-key feel like if I start talking to someone, I go back to a sewing.
Like, stop. Stop.
So, until we get to that level of comfort.
No, I mean I get it because that truly is like a different version of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
But even for me, I feel like it takes me a minute for a man just to see me like in my natural bun
Mhm.
or things like that. Because I just feel like I just look more childish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt like one of my ex-boyfriends, he used to love me with my natural hair. And I thought, I was like, oh my God, like he's embracing my
He said
natural
accept the
side.
bun.
Literally, he accepted it, but I think it was his toxic trait of like, you know what I mean? I'm truly not my best self. And so I felt like he liked me with my natural hair because it's
Oh yeah,
like,
they want you dusty.
yeah, that's how he
Yeah.
wanted me.
Yeah.
He's like, no, babe, I love you with your natural hair and a bun with no makeup on. That's, you know, how Drake says, pretty with no makeup on, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah,
no.
blah. No, sir.
It's a lie. They want you dusty so
Yes.
that
No
one
one's
else
gonna talk to you.
Yes,
Right.
Literally.
Yes. Keep that hair done. Keep that makeup done with or
No,
without
for
a
real.
man.
No,
for
for real.
real. Like, always look your best because they will let you get comfortable and just looking basic as fuck.
Yeah.
Never doing that again. I was
Yeah.
much younger anyway, but still.
Yeah. And I also feel like, speaking of going out and wanting to look your best and blah, 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 like, how do you handle when you do get dressed up and you look nice or whatever? I feel like when you speak articulately, and then on top of that, if your hair is done, your makeup's, you're never beating the bougie allegations at that point.
No.
Like, how do you deal with that?
Honestly, I feel like even when you and I go out, and remember that situation recently when we went out and we're walking
Oh, and the guy
to our
said, I
cars?
can't afford you?
No, yeah, but what did he say first? He said, He said, y'all too classy for me. And we just all started busting out laughing because it's like, what? What is that even supposed to mean?
And then he elaborated and said, yeah, I could never afford y'all.
Exactly. And it's like we weren't dripped down in all this design or anything. It's just like we obviously had ourselves together. You know what I mean? But like we talk about, it's like if we didn't care so much and put so much emphasis on putting ourselves together, will we attract more men? Because I think sometimes, obviously, when we're dressed chill like we are right now, we attract more men out.
It used to not bother me, but like, dang, okay, I know I can fix my face sometimes. I might have RBF, but I'm like, I've also realized that some men genuinely will not approach you if they know they can't afford you.
Facts.
And that kind of makes me feel better. I'm like, all right, well, it's not me, it's you. It is you.
Literally.
And I saw this TikTok too a couple of months ago that said sometimes it's just God's protection that you don't get approached often. And I've also embraced that.
I love that
too, because I'm just like, you know what? Please protect me because I don't need any other nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't need to experience any other nonsense.
No, I agree. Like, I prefer to have less numbers in my phone, less men that have access to me. Like, I actually don't mind if I don't get someone approaching me for the night or a number that night. Like, I'm totally okay with that. I'd rather be, more of a qualified lead than just another number in my phone. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because the older you get, you realize how draining it is to balance and juggle multiple men. And I don't have time to argue and deal with all the mind games and all of that. It's like, listen, I'd rather just find someone that genuinely wants to talk to me and be with me and not send me on a rabbit chase.
Yeah.
Or a rat race.
Quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
For sure. Always, actually.
Absolutely.
But yeah, shall we end there?
Yeah, I feel like this was good.
Thanks for watching. See you next week.
Bye.
Glad you got it together.
Stop. You know how those events be, open bar events, please. Like,
Ashlyn's been drunk the whole episode. That's why my glass is empty and hers is full still.
But honestly, I'm glad I'm sober now.
Ashlyn had a buzz before we started.
Cheers to me, sobered up.
Oh gosh.